There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. I'll request the Secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 19, Social Development Appropriation Bill.
I will now recognize the Honorable Minister of Social Development.
Honorable House Chair, Deputy Minister of Social Development, Mr. Hanif Hendricks, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee of Social Development, and other members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow South Africans, good afternoon. Honorable Chair, thank you for the opportunity to table the budget vote 19 of the Department of Social Development for the 2025-2026 financial year. As we table this budget, let us unite in solidarity to remember and honor the lives of lost during the recent devastating floods in the Eastern Cape. Our thoughts and prayers are with all the affected families as they rebuild their lives. We also call to mind the countless victims of gender-based violence and femicide, whose pain echoes as a call for justice for Olerato Mongale, Shekhofatso Phule, Nostrelo Mthembeni. These are just a few of some of the known victims of gender-based violence. We remember their names as a constant reminder of work that remains to be done. We mourn the passing of the former Deputy President of the ANC, Deputy President of South Africa, Mr. David Mabuza. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, and his organization, the African National Congress, during this difficult time. Honorable Chair, this budget votes coincide with the celebration of Tata Nelson Mandela, one of the most enduring and inspirational icons of our time. Madiba continues to inspire people around the world to work in pursuit of a more humane society. On that would have been Madiba's 107th birthday. We are reminded on his poignant words, I quote, "As long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequalities persist in our world, none of us can truly rest," close quote. Madiba's legacy continues to inspire us as we host the G20 Summit, a historical first for the African continent, under the theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability. South Africa's G20 presidency will amplify Africa's voice in global governance, whilst ensuring that the development priorities of the continent and the global south find expression on the agenda of the G20. DSD Portfolio is participating in the development working group and all the preparations of the G20 Social Summit scheduled for November this year. Budget Vote 19 takes cue from the President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address and the MTTF plan, both of which set out a clear path to build a human society as we reflect of the 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter and 31 years of democracy. We take great pride in how far we have come as a nation. We remain steadfast in our commitment to the Freedom Charter's aspiration that, I quote, "the people shall share in the country's wealth," close quote. This budget honors women pioneers who stood strong and sacrificed selflessly. No one else can repay the debt we owe. But through this budget, we commit ourselves to fulfill their aspiration of making our world a better place for all. I am grateful to stand on the shoulders of giants and pioneers of women like Mama Charlotte Maxeke, whose legacy for social justice resonates profoundly with our mandate. Her lifelong sacrifice is a reminder that the fight for equality and dignity for all is never easy, but always worth it. A year ago, I delivered my maiden budget vote speech and pledged my unwavering commitment to join hands under the banner of the Government of National Unity to restore the dignity of our people. Since then, Deputy Minister and I have traversed the length and breadth of our country, listening and taking stock of what we must do better, responding to the lived experience of our people. Looking back, I am proud of how much we have achieved, who have lived up to our commitment to stabilize the department and its entities, who have now filled the critical post of a Director General, Deputy Director General for Welfare Services, and Chief Financial Officers in the department, who have advertised and will soon fill the post of Executive Director for the Inspectorate, who have filled the post of SASSA CEO and are now on a course to fill all vacant posts of SASSA Regional Executive Managers. The NTA Board is in the process of filling the vacant post of a CEO and a Financial Officer. Chair, I am also pleased to inform this House that the Gender-Based Violence Command Center is now fully operational. Members of the public can reach social workers via a 24/7, 365 days emergency line on 0800 420 428. The center forms part of our mandate under Pillar 4 of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Honorable Chairperson, the progress made to date by our people and this department, we feel proud in that we are covering things that has not been done and that were articulated before. The financial year of our budget allocation is 294 billion rand. Of this amount, 284 billion rand is allocated for monthly direct transfers to 27 million social assistance beneficiaries. This constitutes 96% of our total budget. An amount of 24.7 billion rand is allocated to SASSA for grant administration over the MTF period. The National Department of Social Development has set aside an amount of 52 million rand as a transfer to 22 National Council. At the heart of our collective response lies the social grant system, a vital and consistent lifeline that reaches millions to ensure that no one is left behind. Every month, more than 19 million social grants are paid without fail. These grants continue to support those who are at risk of falling through the cracks. A further 34.9 billion rand is added to the social assistance program for COVID-19 social relief of distress, a vital form of support for millions of unemployed and vulnerable South Africans. Approximately more than 80 million beneficiaries between the age of 18 and 59 years are reached every month. Our plans to modernize and transform SASSA into an efficient, future-ready organization are fully on track. In this financial year, SASSA will continue to roll out the queue management system, self-service kiosk, scanning of beneficiary files, and biometric systems. These ambitious services innovations are completed by the rollout of integrated community registration outreach programs. Targeting the most vulnerable communities, we have allocated over 29 million rands to conduct 516 across the country. Honorable Chair, we remain vigilant to protect the integrity of our social assistance system, and in this regard, we are currently conducting a review process in line with the social assistance regulations. It is now not new, as the previous review focused on public servants. This process is intended to ensure that we pay social grant to eligible beneficiaries, as we say, paying the right social grant to the right person at the right time and place, njalo. The impact of the process has been substantially resulting in an annual saving of 1 billion rand. On this note, let me be very clear. We have not stopped or suspended any grant without due process. I wish to appeal to all beneficiaries who have received correspondence to visit SASSA offices and undergo a review process. Chair, we are forging ahead with processes to replace COVID-19 social relief of distress with a permanent measure in the form of a basic income grant. Accordingly, we intend to retable a policy proposal to Cabinet. The additional element of this policy proposal is to link beneficiaries to employment and sustainable livelihood opportunities. We'll draw on the successes of the pilot projects underway in collaboration with the FinMec Trust. We will continue to put SASSA on the best possible footing to meet the fraud threats we face, as well as those that will probably emerge in the future. To this end, we have allocated over 200 million rand over the MTF period to detect, prevent, and eliminate any form of fraud and corruption. We have completed the pilot of the beneficiary biometric system in 4 offices. Plans are underway to cover all SASSA offices by the end of this financial year. We are determined to ensure that those who steal money meant for the poor to feed their greed are exposed and held accountable. An amount of 216 million is allocated to NDA in the current financial year for grant funding to civil society organizations. Given the high rate of unemployment, we need to support initiatives that promote local economic development, create job opportunities, and reduce poverty. The NDA's extensive engagement across 22 wards has resulted in the establishment of non-community-owned enterprises. The turnaround strategy has revitalized the agency, which has seen it successful, raising 60 million rand to augment its budget. We have commenced with the deregistration of non-compliant NPOs, as per the provision of Section 18(1) of the NPO Act. To date, we have issued over 50,000 notices and deregistered over 15,000 NPOs. But may I hasten to add that not all NPOs are non-compliant, as we have seen an uptake in the number of those submitting their reports. We welcome the Cabinet's recent decision to re-establish the Interministerial Committee on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide in support of the 90-day acceleration program. This will give the much-needed impetus to our national efforts to combat the twin challenges of the gender-based violence and substance abuse. We'll continue with expansion of shelter services with a focus of 30 gender-based violence and femicide hotspots. Of the 52 districts, 6 districts do not have shelters yet. In this regard, we've allocated 102 million to accelerate the recommendation of the second Presidential Summit on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide and the National Shelter in Daba. Honorable Chair, each one of us has an important role to play in confronting head-on the harmful social norms that perpetuate the scourge, in supporting survivors and holding perpetrators accountable. The burden of social ills has brought to the need to employ more social service professionals, which 5 years remaining before 2030, we are off track in achieving the NDP target of employing 55,000 social work service professionals in the sector due to the financial constraint. On this note, we condemn the killing of social workers who have become an easy prey for criminals because of the nature of their work. On the legislative front, we intend to introduce the Victim Support Service Bill and the Children's Amendment Bill in this financial year. Honorable Chair, as I conclude, let me conclude by extending my appreciation to the Deputy Minister, Mr. Hanif Hendricks, all members of the Portfolio Committee of Social Development, led by our Chair, the MEC for Social Development in all provinces, the Director General of the DSD, the CEO of SASSA, the Acting CEO, and the Board of NTA, and all staff in the department and agency in the front line for their hard work and services to our people. It is this now, in my singular honor, to table this budget vote 19 for your support. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I will now recognize Honorable Ramaila.
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, fellow South Africans. Let me also join the Minister as the African National Congress dips its banner in mourning the passing on of our comrade, former Deputy President David Mabuza. Today we rise to speak in strong support of Budget Vote 19 for social development, a testament to our unwavering commitment to building a caring and inclusive society. As we support the advancement of welfare services and community development, we must first acknowledge the exemplary leadership of our sector under the stewardship of Minister Sisi Tolashe. Her appointment as minister represents the profound transformation of our movement, which has achieved as a liberation movement to a governing party that places women at the forefront of social transformation. Minister Tolashe's leadership exemplifies how women leaders can drive meaningful change while ensuring the efficient and prudent use of our limited resources. And within 12 months, we must applaud the Honorable Minister for having ensured that within this short period of time, the Minister was able to appoint the DG, was able to appoint the CFO, and was also able to appoint the CEO of SASA and many other strategic vacant positions. You are doing very well, Minister. Honorable Chair, we celebrate a significant legislative achievement with the committee's recent passage of the Old Persons Amendment Bill. This bill, which has now been sent to President Ramaphosa for signature, represents a crucial step forward in strengthening protection mechanisms for older persons in our country. The amendment bill introduces new definitions to improve interpretation, provides for monitoring and evaluation of services to older persons, and significantly allows for the removal of older persons to temporary safe care without a court order under specific conditions. Our department has demonstrated remarkable progress in protecting our most vulnerable citizens through comprehensive awareness campaigns on elder abuse, which directly aligns with the enhanced protective framework established by the amendment bill. The implementation of the Older Persons Act of 2006 has created a protective framework that ensures our elders live with dignity and security. This legislative foundation is further strengthened by our policy coherence across vulnerable populations, particularly linking our work with children through the ongoing Children's Amendment Bill processes. While the Children's Amendment Bill faces implementation challenges, our department remains committed to ensuring policy alignment that protects both children and elderly persons as part of our comprehensive approach to social protection. The allocation of 319 million for welfare services policy development and implementation support enables us to monitor and strengthen services to the elderly, implement prevention programs, and build capacity across provinces. This investment reflects the ANC's commitment to Ubuntu, the principle that we are all interconnected and responsible for each other's well-being. Our commitment to persons with disability extends beyond rhetoric to concrete action. The development of costing and funding mechanisms for respite care services and the submission of the policy of social development services for people with disability to Cabinet demonstrates our systematic approach to be inclusive. With 1.1 million disability grant beneficiaries, we will ensure that no one is left behind in our journey towards an inclusive society. Honorable Chairperson, the universal treatment curriculum is now being implemented in 12 public substance abuse treatment centers, ensuring standardized evidence-based treatment across the country. This system approach to capacity building reflects our understanding that substance abuse is not merely a criminal justice issue, but a public health challenge requiring comprehensive intervention. However, we must acknowledge that Central Drug Authority faces significant constraints that limit its effectiveness in fulfilling its mandate. The CDA has highlighted major challenges, including inadequate funding and capacity constraints, poor coordination across government departments with a silo mentality, and the barriers to accessing affordable, quality substance abuse treatment services. These challenges are further compounded by the CDA's placement with a single department, which affects its authority and ability to coordinate effectively across the sectors. To address these realities, we are committed to strengthen the CDA's capacity and enhancing its authority to respond to the complex problem of substance abuse. The need for a new, more integrated and evidence-based 5-year National Drug Master Plan requires enhanced support for coordination mechanism. We recognize that without addressing these structural constraints, our efforts to combat substance abuse will continue to face significant obstacles. Honorable Chairperson, the implementation of the National Strategic Plan of Gender-Based Violence and Femicide represents one of our most critical interventions. While we have made progress in establishing 134 dedicated GBVF desks at police stations in hotspot districts, we must present a balanced assessment of our implementation efforts. The monitoring of psychosocial services policy implementation in 15 identified hotspot districts demonstrates our data-driven approach to combating this scourge. However, we acknowledge the implementation challenges that we have emerged. The delay in establishing National Council of Gender-Based Violence and Femicide has significantly hindered our efforts to enhance accountability and effectively address GBVF. Despite some progress in legal frameworks and service provision, challenges remain in financial reporting, multi-sectoral coordination, and the establishment of key institutions. The allocation of 21 million over the medium term for GBV interventions underscores our commitment to addressing what President Ramaphosa has termed our second pandemic. However, we recognize that adequate funding must be coupled with effective coordination and implementation of mechanisms to achieve meaningful outcomes. And I might say, and our Honorable Minister here has demonstrated a thorough and announced comprehension of the scarcity problem by ensuring the application of the theory of opportunity cost. And this theory, it means the minister was able to use limited resources to address limited resources of unlimited wants and needs of the society. The theory of opportunity cost deals with the value of what you give up by making a specific choice. By supporting this vote, honorable members and South Africans, we are saying Minister must continue to pay the grants, must continue to pay the 650 for children, must be able to continue to pay the 370 for the unemployed, must be able to intervene in the areas of disasters like she has intervened in Eastern Cape, has intervened in KZN, and all other places. We support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize Honorable Mtweni.
Sihlalo ohloniphekayo asithobe kubanikazi bomhlaba amakhosi sihloniphe ubuholi obungabefundisi bese sihlonipha umholi wamabutho omkhonto wesizwe ubaba uNxamalala inkonzi yakithi enkandla emidwayidwa kade kwasabe idwengula. Sihlonipha amabutho onke omkhonto wesizwe aholwa ubaba uThumbeza, amalungu ahloniphekileyo alendlu esikuyo, ngiyanibingelela. Isihlalo ngisithola ngemelana egameni lomkhonto wesizwe ngenhliziyo ebuhlungu kakhulu. Ngiphoqekile ukuthi ngingasamukeli isabelo mali se-19. Hayi ngoba singathandi ukuthi abantu bacoshe openi bokuphila, kodwa ngenxa ukuthi isabelo sincane kakhulu ukuhlangabezana nezidingo zokuphila kwabantu. Yonke into ekhona ezweni lakithi amanani ayo ayenyuka kakhulu, okuphazamisa umuntu osebenzayo oholayo, kakhulu kangakanani lo ongaholi indawo othembele kulesabelo kuphela. Lo mnyango uza lapha nezethulo ezinhle kakhulu, kodwa inhlupheko iyaqhubeka idlalubi kubantu bakithi. Inhlupheko nobubha nokweswela sizwa isililo nkalo zonke kubantu bakithi noma lesabelo sesethuliwe. Ngokuqonda kwethu umsebenzi walomnyango ukuguqula impilo zabantu. Umbuzo uthi ngokweqiniso ngempela phambi kaNkulunkulu nakonembeza bethu lesi sabelo sanele yini ukuguqula impilo zabantu? Mhlambe ezinye impilo siyiguqula kodwa siyiguqulele kuhluphekeni, ngoba umnyango wakwazi ukuthatha isinqumo sokususa izikhungo zokuholela eduze kwabantu. Lokho ke kwasidalela inkinga ezinkulu kakhulu, ngoba kwafanele ukuthi abantu bagibele bahamba amabanga amade ukuyolanda lokho kufanele baphile ngakho. Nalapho sebeyile lapho kwakhuphuka amazinga obugebengu. Kwezinye ikhathi babuya ogogo bempuphutheka bengaphethe lutho, sebegetshengiwe kulezo indawo ezikude abaholela kuzo. Ngabe umnyango wakubuka kanjani lokhu uma uyisusa ikhungu labantu abadala nabantu abaphila nokukhubazeka ababekwazi ukufika khona kalula? Kulezi insuku nje olayini bebebade kakhulu, babuye bengaphethe lutho belambatha, kuthiwa imali ayikho. Lolu hlelo lobuchwepheshe lubakhinyabeze kakhulu abantu, ngoba bathi mabefika lapha kuthiwe imali ayikho. Kulolu hlelo olwasuswa ezikhungweni ezasiseduze nabantu, kunemindeni eminingi isihlalo eyayiphila ngalokho. Lolu hlelo lolo lwalizale ifundiso eziningi kakhulu ngesikhathi abantu begijima ngasemumva kweinqola zomholo bedayisa, bakwazi ukwakha amakhaya akwazi ukusimama. Kodwa ukususwa kwalezo ikhungo kwenza ukuthi kulanjwe umnotho womuntu omnyama, wasuswa ezandleni zakhe. Umnotho womuntu omnyama wasiwa konxiwankulu. Abantu bayithola bese emadolobheni, emabhenki, bayithola bese izitolo ezinkulu, oSpar no Shoprite nezinye izitolo la kufanele ukuthi bayohola khona. Kanti ngesikhathi beholele ezikhungweni kwakusizakala nalabo bantu bezitolo zasemakhaya. Lezo izitolo njengoba ngikhuluma nje zavalwa. Lokho kusho indlala enkulu kakhulu kumuntu onsundu. Siwumkhonto wesizwe siyakhuluma nabanikazi bezitolo ezavalwa neziphaza namasonto namakhosi ngezinkantolo zawo. Siyafisa ukuthi kubuyelwe kuwo. Isabelo mali asanele, sincane kakhulu, ngoba lesabelo mali esikhuluma ngaso siya emndenini la intsha eningi ingasebenzi khona. Lesabelo mali esiya kumuntu omdala, kuloyo muntu omdala kunezingane ezisihlanu ngaphakathi endlini ezineminyaka engaphezulu kwama-30 ezingasebenzi ezencike kuso leso sabelo mali. Ake sibheke lokhu kancane. Ngomnyaka 2025-2026 umnyango uhlongoze u276.3 billion nemali engaphezulu ka254 billion yezibonelelo zikahulumeni ngosasa. Nokho njengoba izinombolo zibonakala zizinhle kangaka emaphepheni, amanani ezibonelelo awanele ukubhekana nezindleko zokuphila. Lesi sabelo esitholwa abantu abadala ngenyanga asanele ngenxa ukuthi ubhaskidi wokudla ubiza ngaphezulu kwesibonelelo. Isabelo esitholwa izingane asanele, isabelo esitholwa abantu abaphila nokukhubazeka asenele ngenxa ukuthi indleko zokudla nokuphila ziphezulu kakhulu, zidla magalani. Ake ngikhumbuze lendlu ngezethembiso ezenziwe ngo-2024 ezingazange zifinyelele ndawo ukusebenzela abantu bakithi okuyibona abacindezelwe kakhulu ubuhlwempu. Umnyango wathembisa ukuphothula inqubomgomo yesisekelo semali okuzolekelelwa ngaso. Uma silalela izethulo zomnyango ngama-APP siyeza ukuthi akakabikho mali ehlelelwe lokho. USASSA wathembisa ukufaka izicelo kuhlelo lobuchwepheshe ukuze kunqanyulwe olayini abade. Kodwa kuze kube manje olayini basebade kakhulu ngaphandle kwamahhovisi kaSASSA. Angifinyelele isiphethweni sihlalo. U-NDA wasungulelwa ukuthi uvule amathuba emsebenzi, ukhiphe abantu kwi-system yokuhola igrant, wandise amathuba emsebenzi. Kodwa uma sibuka isabelo sika-NDA sisibona sisincane kakhulu. Simenza u-NDA abe isiqala, abe inkomazi engenalo ubisi. Kanti ngokufisa kwethu besifisa ukuyibona le nkomazi ibhonga ey'nkalweni naseyigodini ihlangabeza inhlupheko yomuntu onsundu ngokuthi u-NDA akanikezwe imali, isabelo esizomenza akwazi ukufinyelela inhlupheko yomuntu onsundu. Angithokoze kakhulu sihlalo.
Ngithokoza kakhulu mina elihloniphekile. I will now recognize the Portfolio Chairperson of Social Development, Honorable Masango. Ngiphendula ngesikhaya ngoba ngimzwile ukuthi ukhulume njalo.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister of Social Development, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I hope this reflection on the revised MTF and its implications for our social development agenda prompts the department to assess whether it is truly fulfilling both the letter and the spirit of its mandate. Amid challenging fiscal conditions, we acknowledge National Treasury's efforts to uphold social protection. However, concerns remain that funding gaps and implementation hurdles could jeopardize support for the vulnerable communities this budget seeks to protect. The continued prioritization of social grant is welcome. These instruments are not merely income transfers, they are developmental interventions. They provide dignity, stability, and in many cases, they prevent destitution. But we must now turn our focus to where systems are falling short. Conditional allocations to SASSA must be rebalanced for feasibility and fairness. 8 billion rand has been provisionally allocated to SASSA's 2025-26 financial year. However, this amount is heavily conditional. Honorable members, we must scrutinize the feasibility of these conditions while the DA supports measures to prevent fraud and enhance verification. Let us be very clear. Conditional allocations that hinge on interdepartmental systems not yet fully functional risk harming the very people SASSA exists to serve. SASSA is operating at less than 50% staffing capacity. Our oversight visits confirm that local offices are overburdened, digitization remains uneven, and coordination with other entities is still evolving. To predicate funding on flawless integration with these databases without providing operational support or transition measures is setting SASSA up for failure. We therefore call for a phased, support-based implementation of conditional funding mechanisms so that reforms proceed without interrupting the critical function of grant disbursement. Fraud must be fought, yes, but not at the cost of survival. The migration of the Office of the Rights of the Child must be implemented without delay. The absence of a dedicated line item or operational plan for the Office of the Rights of the Child is concerning, given the Honourable President's 2023 announcement that the ORC would migrate to the Presidency. This office plays a pivotal role in coordinating child rights across departments. The lack of progress in its migration not only undermines policy coherence, it also signals a worrying disregard for the urgency of children's rights and issues. At a time when child poverty, violence, and malnutrition are worsening, we can ill afford institutional drift. Both the department and the Presidency must finalize the migration of the ORC and allocate sufficient resources to ensure that the office functions with real authority, coordination, and impact. The Central Drug Authority cannot remain unfunded and marginalized. Substance abuse is now a cross-cutting social crisis. It contributes directly to school dropouts, gender-based violence, unemployment, and preventable deaths. The Central Drug Authority is the structure mandated to coordinate government response. Yet, once again, we find no funding and no implementation framework for the CDA in the MTEF. This omission is not new. We cannot continue to ignore the pleas of communities grappling with addiction, nor can we expect results without resourcing. The 34.9 billion rand allocated for the Social Relief of Distress grant is welcome. However, the basic income support policy framework must be finalized as a matter of urgency to be scrutinized as to whether it will provide long-term certainty and respond more adequately to structural poverty and youth unemployment. While we note the National Development Agency's efforts to strengthen community-based livelihoods, increase transparency in the NDA's profiling and funding of civil society organizations, especially around performance monitoring, is needed. The long-delayed regulations to the Fundraising Amendment Act remain critical to ensuring rapid mobilizations of resources during disasters and humanitarian crises. The department must expedite this process without further delay. The DA will continue to exercise oversight with diligence and integrity. A caring state is not judged by how much it allocates, but by what it delivers and to whom. And we will hold departments accountable where promises outpace plans or where priorities are announced without budgetary backing. Let us move forward with urgency, with coherence, and with compassion. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I will now recognize Honourable Marais.
Thank you, House Chair. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Commissars, Fighters, and fellow South Africans. The Economic Freedom Fighters categorically and unequivocally reject this proposed budget on the social development, as it is not a budget designed to lift the poor out of hunger, unemployment, and despair. Instead, it is a cold, bureaucratic exercise and an administrative illusion designed to pacify the masses while protecting the pockets of the politically connected. Yes. What we have is a budget that exists only on paper. In theory, it speaks of social relief, of development of welfare, but in reality, it functions as a mechanism to enrich the inner circle of this ruling elite, those who continue to live in comfort of former liberation credentials while ordinary South Africans starve. House Chair, we must ask ourselves the following questions. How can a department tasked with the well-being of the most vulnerable, the elderly, children, the disabled, abuse survivors, and the unemployed continue to underspend on food programs, delay payments to NGOs that distribute food to the vulnerable, and the mismanaged grant distribution while inflating administrative costs? The delays in grant payments, that underfunding of shelters for abused women and children, and the chronic neglect of persons with disabilities are all indication of a department that has lost its moral responsibility and development compass. It is a department that has surrendered its constitutional obligations to the hyenas and vultures, who as longest time have enriched themselves through corruption and fraud. One of the most alarming realities facing South Africans is a rising cost of living, worsened by the recent increase of the petrol levy. This is not simply a technical adjustment, it is a direct blow to the livelihood of those who can't least afford it. Petrol price hikes lead to increased food prices, transport fees, electricity fees, and water bills. Yet, while the cost of living of everything rises, social grants and essential service remain stagnant and are being cut. Older persons, many of who rely solely on state pensions, are being forced to choose between food and medicine. Parents receiving child grants are watching the value of those grants shrink while the rising cost of living. People living with disability face the impossible challenge of surviving without adequate support. This budget is not inadequate, it is cruel in its impact. It reveals a painful and lingering truth in the time of rising costs and deepening poverty. This budget cuts where it should invest. It leaves millions exposed to hunger, hardship, hopelessness, and despair. Moreover, the very institutions created to serve the vulnerable and failing in their mission, the National Development Agency, NDA, mandate to alleviation poverty, has become ineffective. Communities do not see or feel its presence. Its programs are disjoint and its impact nearly invisible. The Drug Central Authority, CDA, means to combat youth substance abuse, is failing. Instead of leading target intervention, it has become a salary-paying structure, lacking direction, engagement, and action. Meanwhile, children fall into addiction as those responsible remain idle. The situation at SASSA is a national disgrace. The social relief of distress SRD grant meant to provide emergency aid is now riddled with fraud. Criminals exploit the system using stolen IDs, while genuine beneficiaries are denied help. This is a direct result of a weak system, poor oversight, and political neglect. These failures reveal a broken, uncountable system. The budget prioritizes cuts over dignity, bureaucracy over impact, and silence over accountability. To restore dignity, to rebuild a just society, serious reforms are needed. Social grants must increase in line with the cost of living. SASSA must eliminate fraud and ensure grants reach the rightful recipients. Institutions like NDA and CDA must reform with clear, measurable performance standards rooted in the community needs. Free transportation must be provided for pensioners, persons with disability, and orphans to access grant payments. A nation should not be judged by its economical figures alone, but how it treats the most vulnerable, those who cannot fight for themselves. The 2025-26 social development budget fails the test. It is our duty to change that, not next year, not next term, but now. EFF reject this proposed budget. EFF want to take this opportunity to invite each and everyone to come to our 12th anniversary in Kailicha, the rugby stadium, to celebrate with us the 12 years of unbroken service to the needy and the vulnerable. Viva EFF!
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I will now invite Honourable Maki.
Honorable House Chairperson, thank you so much. The IFP notes this crucial budget vote as it truly speaks directly to the heart of our democratic promise to protect the most vulnerable among us, to advance dignity, and to reduce poverty. The Department of Social Development, through its budget and annual performance plan for 2025-2026, shoulders a profound responsibility in achieving these constitutional and moral obligations. The IFP acknowledges the 294 billion allocation to the department for 2025-2026, a 5.7% increase. This modest growth is welcome, while noting that more ought to be done to address the growth social demand of the nation, grappling with high unemployment, deepening poverty, and rising social ills. Social grants remain the cornerstone of income support in South Africa, and the IFP welcomes the increases in the old age and child support grants. However, the IFP maintains that while grants are vital for alleviating poverty, they must be linked to sustainable livelihood, skills development, and job creation to break intergenerational cycles of dependency. House Chairperson, we remain deeply concerned about the real-term decline in the disability grant and foster care grant allocation. These are some of our most vulnerable populations, and reducing support undermines inclusive development. We welcome the department's commitment to submit the basic income support policy to Cabinet. The IFP has long called for an inclusive and sustainable social protection mechanism for those aged 18 to 59 who are currently exclusive from other grant systems. However, we urge the department to ensure this policy is fiscally responsible and accompanied by clear exit pathways linked to skills, entrepreneurship, and employment. Honorable House Chairperson, the department's plan to strengthen the psychosocial support services, combat gender-based violence and substance abuse, and protect the rights of children and persons with disabilities aligned with our national priorities. However, we urge the department to ensure that these targets are not merely numerical. Implementation must be visible, measurable, and impactful. South Africa's deepening inequalities, poverty, and social vulnerability demands more than incremental change. It requires transformative, inclusive, and accountable social policy. The department must not only meet its targets, but do so in a way that restores dignity, empowers communities, and builds pathways out of poverty. In light of all matters raised above, the IFP supports this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize Honorable Peters.
Honorable House Chair, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and Honorable Members, on behalf of the Patriotic Alliance, we express our support for Budget Vote 19 of the Social Development. This budget is a critical instrument in advancing the social welfare of our people, particularly the most vulnerable in our society. We acknowledge the department's 5-year strategic plan, which outlines a clear vision for addressing the pressing challenges of poverty, inequality, and social exclusion. Speaker, allow me to address a few key areas that's been addressed. The department's three strategic priorities: eradicating poverty, building resilient communities, and strengthening social protection systems, are aligned with the urgent needs of our nation. We note with appreciation the strategic focus areas outlined in the plan, which include expanding access to comprehensive social security, enhancing community-based interventions to tackle social ills, strengthening partnerships with civil society and other stakeholders to deliver inclusive development. But what is most key is the creation of over 280,000 jobs within the EPWP, and that is most important. These priorities are not just aspirations, but essential commitments that must be realized through effective implementation. With an overall budget allocation of just over 294 billion, the department carries a significant responsibility to ensure that every rand is spent efficiently, transparently, and in line with the identified priorities. We call upon the Honourable Minister to institute strict control measures to prevent wastage, corruption, and misallocation of funds. The people of South Africa cannot afford inefficiencies. Every cent must translate into tangible improvements for our societies. We have taken note of the issues raised during the committee's deliberations, including concerns about service delivery gaps, administration bottlenecks, and the need for stronger monitoring and evaluation. We appeal to the Minister to ensure that a concerted effort is made to address these concerns. It is not enough to simply note the recommendations of the committee report. There must be a dedicated, accountable mechanism to oversee their implementation. We welcome the National Development Agency's strategic focus on the district development model as a key mechanism for eradicating poverty through localized, integrated planning. The success of this model depends on meaningful collaboration with all stakeholders, government, so civil society, and the private sector. We urge the Minister to ensure that the NDA is sufficiently capacitated to drive this agenda effectively. Honourable Minister, the Patriotic Alliance supports this budget vote, but our support is not unconditional. We expect visible progress, strict financial discipline, and unwavering commitment to the strategic objectives outlined in the department's plan. The people of South Africa are watching, and they deserve nothing less than a government that delivers on its promises. Let this budget be a turning point where plans become action and commitments become a reality. We support the budget vote 19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I'll now recognize Honourable Van Staden.
Geagte voorsitter, ons land se bejaardes, kinders en weerloses moet ten alle koste beskerm word. En ons bejaardes omrede hulle hierdie land opgebou het, sodat die jeug van vandag die vrugte van hul harde werk kan pluk en geniet. Ons kinders omrede hul hierdie land se toekoms is, en sonder 'n toekoms is daar nie 'n Suid-Afrika nie. Ons weerloses wat nêrens het om te gaan nie weens die hoë werkloosheidsvlakke wat tans in Suid-Afrika heers. The statistics, South African new statistics showed that 95,000 South Africans have lost their jobs in the period from March 24 to March 25. 95,000 people that don't have an income. 95,000 people that will probably be homeless very soon. Children will go to sleep with an empty stomach every night. Last year of July, I was standing here and I was saying that the inadequate funding of non-profit organizations like children's homes and homes for people with disabilities constitutes a violation of the basic human rights of this part of our society. Yet, this problem is ongoing. The problem regarding the funding of welfare organizations in Gauteng is still not resolved, and we must act fast to solve this problem once and for all. This is a crisis. This while the Gauteng department had to give 102 million rand back during the 24-25 financial year to National Treasury for money that has not been spent. This while CEOs of state-owned enterprises earn up to 42,400 rand per day, 15.5 million rand a year. Take note that more than 400 million rand is spent each year on executive salaries. This while we see every single day how children are begging at intersections in cities throughout South Africa for food and money. Instead, they should be in school learning. But they must do it in order to survive for them and their families. Ons bejaardes in ons huise kan nie net van vergeet word nie. Daar sal mooi na hulle gekyk moet word. My bekommernis is dat as ons hierdie soort van probleme ervaar met ons kinderhuise, watter probleme is daar net nie meer met ons huise waarvan ons nie eers weet nie. We have seen the chaos regarding the implementation of the new SASSA cards that has not only caused delays but also confusing and distress among our beneficiaries. We have seen what negative impact the COVID restrictions had in 2019-20 on the elderly and the children and the poor of this country, and we cannot allow anything to put such stress on these communities once again. Ongeveer 11 jaar gelede het ek in hierdie einste departementse debat in die Gauteng wetgewer gewaarsku dat Suid-Afrika gaan ontaard in 'n welsynstaat weens die staat wat in die pad van die privaat sektor staan om werksgeleenthede en 'n groeie ekonomie te skep met die rasgebaseerde wette wat nou nog op die wetboeke van hierdie land is. Ek het ook gewaarsku dat geen regering werksgeleenthede kan skep nie. Slegs die privaat sektor kan dit doen. En hier staan ons nou vandag. Suid-Afrika is nou 'n welsynstaat. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I will now recognize Honorable Kobe.
Honorable House Chair, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, honorable members, fellow South Africans that are joining us online, accept my greetings, please, as we delve into Budget 19 of Social Development. Honorable House Chair, Action SA recognizes the critical mandate of the Department of Social Development in protecting South Africa's most vulnerable. We acknowledge the Department's ongoing work in providing social assistance and implementing programs intended to uplift the poor, the unemployed, and the marginalized. However, as this House considers Budget Vote 19, we are compelled to register our deep concern. While the budget reflects a nominal increase of 5.7%, the real increase is a meager 0.9%. In truth, most core programs, social security policy, welfare services, and community development suffer real-term declines. This would be troubling in any year, but this year, especially in 2025, with the rising cost of living, worsening social instability, and persistent unemployment, it is devastating. What is most alarming is the department's plan to reduce the number of social grant beneficiaries from 27.7 million in 2024-2025 to just 19.3 million in 2027-2028. Honorable Minister, that is a staggering reduction of over 8 million people that would no longer receive this vital support. House Chair, these are not just statistics. These are mothers who will no longer be able to put food on the table, grandparents who will no longer be able to afford chronic medication, young people whose only income while desperately looking for work is this grant. Cutting it back in these desperate times sends a chilling message to millions of South Africans. You are on your own. While we acknowledge the importance of rooting out fraud and inefficiency at SASSA, we must balance this with compassion. Beneficiaries are already being made to travel long distances and sometimes paying over 150 Rand just to wait in lines at under-resourced offices. Many are sent back home empty-handed. Minister, we are turning a system of protection into a system of punishment to the most vulnerable. On the ground, communities are pleading for urgent help in the face of drugs, gangsterism, and despair. Yet, the department's targets for prevention and treatment are simply inadequate. The fight against substance abuse cannot be won with slogans and budget cuts. We need funding for real, localized, people-powered solutions. While we are disappointed, we are also disappointed by the persistent delays in implementing sector funding policy, which is meant to support NPOs doing vital work in the front lines, and the slow progress in establishing the Inspectorate for Social Assistance, which should also rebuild trust in this system. House Chair, South Africans need a social development budget that is bold, people-centered, and responsive to the scale of crisis that our people are facing. In light of the above, we would need to take the budget under serious consideration, whether we consider to vote in favor of it or not. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Let me now recognize the Honorable Deputy Minister of Social Development.
Honorable House Chair, all protocol observed. Before commenting on the budget, let me state that 8 months ago, I received key delegations from the Minister of Social Development, the Honorable Minister Sasisi Tolasi, and these delegations are HIV/AIDS, substance abuse, families and parenting, older persons, and persons with disabilities. These functions largely form part of welfare services, which is Program 4 in the National Department of Social Development's budget. Welfare services are concurrent functions with provinces, and the provinces are responsible for implementing government's policies and the delivery of services. In the build-up to this budget, I went to the streets. I went on a dozen community engagements to tell them about this budget. And unlike the fighters, they supported the budget. Honorable House Chair, I have been allocated 109 million rand to carry out my delegations. But I stand firm to assist the Minister with the billions under her control. Allow me to unpack briefly how much money the department must use in some of my delegations. We get 44 million rand for HIV/AIDS, and 20 million we give to the South African National AIDS Council. And we also allocate monies to the South African National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence and the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. With my other budget, we allocate a portion to the Association for Dementia and Alzheimer, and also the South African Older Persons Forum. For families and parenting, the budget is 10 million, and we allocate to the Suid-Afrikaanse Vrouwenvereniging nearly R1 million, and to Malang 1.3 million rand. Now, the budget for persons with disabilities is 18 million, of which the deaf-blind South Africa is allocated just under 2 million, autism 1.7 million, and other foundations substantial amounts. So allow me to make the point that since I was implementing these delegations, which is guided by the 5-year 2004-2029 medium-term development plan, only 2/3 of the budget is used by DSD. We allocate 1/3 of our budget to NPOs that align with government policies. It's been a long-standing practice that welfare services are rendered by the government in partnership with non-profit organizations and NGOs in a unified system that benefits all the vulnerable individuals and groups in our society. It is high time we recognize the failures in the system, although it's helping us, and revisit our practices and partnerships to find ways and build a system that won't fail our people, one that everyone can rely on. We need to fund NGOs that align with government policies. These policies are determined by Parliament, it's taken forward by Cabinet, and it's signed off by the President. So where NGOs and NPOs do not align themselves with government policies and programs, they must be last in the queue. I want to hastily add that we depend on DSD's portfolio committee on social development and the oversight they play, because they represent the streets. We have a chair that is vigilant. She gives us a hard time, but we appreciate it and we learn from her all the time, and we try and accommodate what the streets want. Overall, my task, Honourable Chair, is to determine policy and programs, ones that all stakeholders should be involved in. In other words, policies that are determined by the President, the Cabinet and the Cabinet cluster, as well as the GNU's Leadership Forum, and also, of course, Parliament. That said, it is my job to enforce these policies that apply to DSD, provinces, municipalities, NPOs and CSOs. Let me underline the fact that I will make a special effort to ask the private sector to agree that when they give funding, that these policies be aligned with adopting a one policy, one plan, one budget approach. At this juncture, I want to summarily reflect on some of the mentioned delegations. HIV is very concerning, especially amongst children and the youth. At the moment, 150,000 children are living with HIV in our country, and each year it's growing by about 10,000. Now that cannot be that parents like ourselves are responsible for our children being infected with HIV because of what we do. Accelerating efforts of protecting children. I work side by side with Honourable Minister Tolashi during the Child Protection Month. DSD and the Minister reached out to Limpopo Province and other provinces like Jamila Village in Tanzania. The aim was to raise awareness against HIV/AIDS as a chronic disease and initiate social behavioral change programs. So we do have programs like YOLO. Now YOLO means you only live once. Those of us, we still remember James Bond. So children only live once. And that's why we must make a special effort to assist our children. So my department has several other programs like CHOMI and also parenting programs. So we are not ignoring the challenges that we have with our children that are infected with HIV/AIDS. This budget, which I'm requesting approval, and we've already heard the fighters say no to the budget, which is very disappointing, will help us to contribute to the implementation of the National Strategic Plan on HIV/AIDS and the pillars associated with it. Let me talk about gender-based violence. I went to Atteridgeville, and a second-year university student stood up and asked me, Deputy Minister, what are you doing to protect me from the boys at the university? What is government doing? What is Minister Tolashi doing? What is Parliament doing to protect me? At the moment, our young girls feel that they are standing alone and there's no one to help them. I remember when we had the genocide in Bosnia, one of my community engagements, we then also developed don't try and disrupt me. We started a boy-child parliament to make sure that we start with the boys so that they don't harm the girls at high school and at universities. The department is aware of the immense challenges our elders face when collecting their pension, and we will have to address that. We cannot allow elderly people to stand in long queues. The Family Matters program is a very important program of government. I want to also conclude by stating that in my build-up to this budget, I engaged with an international aid organization that provides 30 million sustainable livelihoods in their country and other countries of the world. They want to increase it to 100 million sustainable livelihoods. So we, this morning, engaged with them to find out how they can assist South Africa. So we're not moaning and groaning about our budget. We know that we have to top up our budget by various means. I'm pleased to say that all of you have been invited to come and see the programs that's happening in many countries of the world that create sustainable livelihoods. This is what the department is doing. We partner with the religious communities, with the faith communities, with international aid organizations. They are ready to come forward and to assist us. Honorable Chair and members, I stand and conclude that I'm in full support of the 2025-26 pro-poor budget of 283 million. I would like to thank Al-Jamaa for also supporting the budget, and those political parties that don't do so, that's the most anti-revolutionary thing you can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Order, honourable members. We now invite the Honourable, the Reverend Moshe.
Honourable Chairperson, before I come to my speech, let me address myself to Mayor Tolashi. I saw over the news this day the heartbreaking situation that mothers and children, those who are victims of the floods in Durban, have been thrown out of Bayway Hotel. They spent the night sleeping on concrete floors, and it was said that because nothing seems to be happening, looks like they might sleep again in the streets. I want to appeal to you as a mother. Even though it is not your line function to address them, I wish to appeal to you to address the MEC responsible and local government and advise them or assist them so that something can be done for those vulnerable people. It was also said that there are children who were born a few days ago who also slept in the open last night. The ACDP, thank you very much for considering what I'm saying, Mayor Tolashi. The ACDP affirms the constitutional imperative to care for the most vulnerable in our society. Yet the Department of Social Development continues to fall short of this sacred duty. The 2025-26 social development budget allocates 422.3 billion rands with nearly 285 billion rands for social grants. While increases to old age disability and child support grants are welcomed, ballooning debt servicing costs of 425 billion rands raise major concerns about the sustainability of these grants. There is also no funding provision for the social relief of distress grant beyond March 2026. The old age grant receives 117.4 billion rands, a 130 increase per elderly person to 2,350 rand, 315 rands. The child support grant rises by 30 rands to just 560 rands, not even covering a jar of peanut butter. Disability grants and foster care grants total 99.5 billion rands, which we believe will not be sufficient for the ever-increasing needs and challenges of our people. Chairperson, by the department's failure to finalize the special housing needs program, despite the 2022 approval, a glaring indictment.
Honourable, the Reverend, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Honourable Member, is Katsake here over by 10 seconds? Order, honorable members. We invite the Honorable Ghana.
Honorable members, fellow South Africans, let me start here. I think it's good that we are not reading a lot these nowadays in the news that people are not receiving their social grants. Sometimes we take these matters for granted when they happen. If there's a month that the grant recipients don't receive their grant, there will be an issue. So when they receive, we should be able to say that, no, the department is doing well. But Minister, this issue with the Treasury, between Treasury and SASSA on this verification, I think it's starting to cause panic. And we've been, we get asked about it. And I think better communication from your side will go a long way in allaying the fears of grant recipients in that matter. So, Minister, last year I was standing here, and you were sitting there. I raised the issue of gambling addiction. And at the time, you did not understand where I was going. It's a big problem. So I heard the Deputy Minister speaking about the various social ills, but you're not speaking about the gambling addiction. It's starting to affect school children. We are having problem gamblers who are learners. But in your response, your program 4, you are not mentioning this particular issue, Minister. And I said last year, I was standing here, you were sitting there, and I raised this particular issue. Minister, there's Reatlehile Matsunyane, she's a student at Rhodes, and she has asked me to convey this message to you, having seen the work that we do as Rising Suns. And I quote, she says, as a country, we are facing an epidemic of gender-based violence, gambling addiction, teenage pregnancy, and substance abuse. It is essential for the department to invest in people, relationships, and spaces that actually develop society. Part of this will mean expanding the role of social workers by partnering them with psychology graduates, not just for crisis response, but to build trauma-informed, school-based, and neighborhood-rooted support systems. It will mean funding asset-based programs that grow people that they already have. End quote. So I agree with Reatlehile, Minister, in that in building our country, we do need to place young people, because we are going to leave, Minister DM, we are going to leave this country. The generation that's going to inherit this country must be part of the solution now. We are going to die. You are also going to die. The next generation that inherits this country must be part of the solution now. Okay, just
Order, honorable members. Honorable Lazo Webster, it's your opportunity.
Thank you to my One Caucus member for the clap. Greetings, Honorable Chairperson. I think one of the things we have to reflect on, even as we engage this budget, is that the true test of a government is how it treats its vulnerable. And not only how it treats them in moments of crisis, but more importantly, how it helps them in mobility and progress and moving forward. And that's what social development must be. It must be a system that not only protects dignity, but a system that also enables progress. It's got to be able to not only shield people from hardship, but also not trap them there. And I think this is where, as a country, we fall short. The budget exposes this painful truth, that we're good at giving people the ability to survive, but never enough to rise. over 19 million South Africans depend on social grants to live in this country. And so there's 266 billion that's allocated to this, and it's vital. But beyond that, what vision exists to help people to stand on their own 2 feet? What is the scaffolding that turns survival into reliance? At age 18, the support grant for children ends. And with that ends any structured support from the state. So we cut young people off just as the real struggle begins. There's no skills pipeline, there's no transition. And we call this support, but it's not sustainable, not socially, not economically or morally. So in this regard, we have to speak about the future of basic income supports. And as BOSA, we support universal basic income grants. And while we welcome the early moves toward a legislative framework, the urgency for that is missing. Instead of building a foundation for dignity and progress, government is turning income supports into a maze with punitive conditions because Treasury has confirmed that the 370 SRD grants is extended, sure, but no funding is secured beyond that. And so worse, access may soon be tied to conditions that have been put in place. And let's be honest, the problem in South Africa is not that people aren't looking for work, it's that work doesn't exist. So layering these conditions on top of a broken system doesn't create opportunity, it blocks it and it traps people once again. The same unsustainability plays out in other corners like the NGO sector, where there's transfers that are delayed, funding that is inconsistent. And if this sector collapses, so does our ability to deliver care with dignity and build mobility from poverty. And so my time is up. So I will say we support this grant, but we need to look at this budget. We support the budget, but we need to look at the whole system and how we can rise and help people to rise more than just trapping them in vulnerability. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. We invite the Honourable Abrahams to...
Thank you, Chairperson. 96% of DSD's entire budget, 815.8 billion, over the MTEF period is allocated to SASSA for social grants. Currently, approximately 45% of South Africans depend on a grant to survive. One would therefore think that ensuring the security of these grants would be priority number one. However, SASSA has become synonymous with mismanagement, fraud, and corruption. Hundreds of millions of rand gone with little, if any, financial recovery. This is as a result of SASSA's own verification and security measures, including cybersecurity, not keeping pace with the growing demand and the evolving criminal syndicates over the last 25 years. It is therefore no coincidence National Treasury has had to intervene, assigning mandatory conditions to the administration of grants to stop the financial bleed. A necessary step to ensure grants, taxpayers' money, go to the correct beneficiaries, not ghost beneficiaries or criminal syndicates. It is regrettable the application of this intervention is having an adverse impact on vulnerable beneficiaries as a result of systemic challenges at SASSA, inaccurate government databases, and beneficiaries not being afforded the 30-day notice period to comply before their grant is suspended due to inefficient communication from SASSA. Sending vulnerable beneficiaries to unmoving SASSA queues without increasing staff capacity, knowing full well that most of SASSA's offices operate at less than 50% staff capacity, is not Ubuntu. In fact, it is the opposite. Sending beneficiaries to a SASSA queue is sending beneficiaries to go have their dignity stripped away. Minister, please consider calling on your CSO partners to volunteer as queue marshals and assist in triaging queries. My experience walking these queues is beneficiaries just want information and communication and do not need to be subjected to hours of waiting to receive this. Chair, the strides made towards capacitating the Inspectorate for Social Assistance are welcome, a necessary mechanism to combat fraud and corruption, as SASSA cannot investigate itself. The quicker fraud investigations, together with the budget, are moved out of SASSA to an independent inspectorate, the better. Treasury correspondence also indicated 376.4 million will be removed from social assistance grants over the MTEF period to fund other government priorities because of significant underspending. It further references 2 policy proposals discussed at Cabinet. On the 19th of February, DSD informed the committee that Treasury shut down the maternal support policy due to financial constraints. What DSD failed to mention is that part of the reason was its own underspending. After years of developing this policy against the backdrop of persistent childhood stunting, children dying annually from malnutrition, and a clear understanding that investing early in our children leads to healthy adults and a prosperous South Africa, the opportunity to implement slipped through DSD fingers despite the availability of funds. The allocation and spending of funds must be improved. Hundreds of millions of rand declared as savings or underspending cannot keep being returned to Treasury when it is desperately needed within DSD. The maternal support policy is far too important, Minister, and it must be raised at every opportunity as a part of DSD's budget priorities because there is no better investment than in our children. Chair, it is discouraging that despite the introduction of the child support grant in 2022 and raising this concern numerous times in committee, DSD has still not included this as a designated budget line item. Why is that? Why is there a grant that exists in regulation and in law, but it does not exist in the budget? The National Development Agency has for a number of years been trapped in a recurring cycle of so-called turnaround. It cannot escape this hamster wheel because it continues to cling to the nostalgic memory of what it once was. While its fundraising achievements are commendable, it must exercise caution not to hyperinflate this target as an attempt to mask from the glaring fact that the NDA spends 85.6% of its budget on salaries and operational costs, while only 14.4% on its core mandate, which is funding CSOs in poverty-stricken communities and linking participants to economic opportunities. If the Minister was serious about cost-cutting, consideration should be given to bringing some of NDA's functions in-house and assigning others to departments better suited and resourced to deliver the desired impact, which is currently lacking. In closing, we must remember that every rand lost to mismanagement, fraud and corruption is a rand stolen from the child that goes hungry, from the graduate begging for work, and from the parent praying for their family safety. It is not a lack of funding that is the greatest obstacle, but the abuse, inefficiency and complacency in how these funds are managed. The Democratic Alliance will continue to stand with those who serve with integrity and fight against these obstacles to a prosperous, dignified and caring South Africa. Thank you.
We invite the Honourable Munyai to take the debate forward.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I think, Honourable Chairperson, House Chairperson, the ANC rise to unconditionally and to give unwavering support for the budget vote 19 of the Department on Social Development. Honourable members, Honourable Minister Nokzolo Tolashe, Deputy Minister Hendricks, and the people of South Africa. Allow me to use this opportunity to congratulate the appointed Director General, Mr. Peter Nechpare, and the entire DSD executive management, the appointed Group CEO of SASSA, Mr. Themba Mahlo, and the entire executive, the acting CEO of the NDA, Thabani Buthelezi, and the board is duly acknowledged. Honourable House Chairperson, Bare van Staden stood here before this podium to carry out an patriotic propaganda message that South Africa is practicing the racist law. It is incorrect because the racist law were last practiced, being institutionalized during the apartheid regime era of Verwoerd, Botha, Malan, and others. our understanding of national liberation is being determined by our grasp of its antithesis. I'm raising this issue because it is the similar message that is being extended and carried beyond the borders of South Africa to undermine South African sovereignty. All our laws are aligned with the country's constitution of a democratic state. The people of South Africa, this year, we celebrated 70th anniversary of the Freedom Charter, as it was adopted 26 June 1955. The Freedom Charter reaffirmed our commitment for the advancement of the national democratic revolution, and the demands of Freedom Charter constituted the vision for South Africa that is free from colonialism of a special time. Today, in the context of this budget, we assess the progress and challenges that we're experiencing, or that remains. On social clause of the Freedom Charter, on House Chairperson, it assessed the following, open quote, the aged, the orphans, and the disabled, and the sick shall be cared for by the state, close quote. It is not by accident that this commitment of the Freedom Charter as the lodestar or the living document is enshrined in Section 9, 10, and 27 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. And also it's emphasized in Chapter 11 of the National Development Plan, the NDP Vision 2030. The people of South Africa, you have to understand that this constitutional commitment characterized the mandate of the DSD, or the Department of Social Development, to provide social protection, reduce vulnerability, and alleviate and also ultimately prevents poverty and empowers our people, families, and communities through a range of diverse social development intervention programs. This financial year, 2025-2026, 271 billion is budgeted for social grants to fulfill the commitment of the Freedom Charter. And again, that continue to serve the clause that I outlined earlier, so that all the people that are listed will be cared by the state. This will increase the social grants payment to over 20 million beneficiaries. This will bring a renewed sense of hope and dignity to the most vulnerable members of our society. Without exaggeration, for the past 30 years, the ANC-led government made a fundamental strides to fight poverty, and also through grants and other programs that are outlined in the APP that we have adopted. Guided by the Freedom Charter, and the ANC consistently championed the progressive policies aimed at eradicating poverty, reducing inequality, and expanding economic participation. We agree, maybe before that, as part of our commitment, the ANC honorable ministers will continue to make a clarion call and agree with those that says there must be introduction of the basic income support grant within a strategic and social economic intervention designed to ensure that no South African is left behind in the fight against the extreme poverty. It is a myth and lack of political science 101 for anyone to convince himself or herself that South Africa is a welfare state. Introduction of the basic income grant, amongst others, is not about fostering, in fact, even the provision of the grant is not about fostering dependency. It's not about the handout. It is a direct response to South Africa's structural economic challenges, particularly the widespread unemployment, job insecurity, poverty, hunger, and the rising cost of living. So it is a response to a condition, scientific condition that we live in. Because if you don't analyze the challenges facing the Republic, you may argue that we are the welfare state. By providing a stable and guaranteed income, we can empower individuals, create economic opportunities, and stimulate local economics, and contribute to more just and sustainable society. As personal commitment, we again reaffirm our support for social relief distress beyond 2026, as affirmed by the Minister of Finance, Umadiba. House Chairperson, this budget will help us to consolidate the key and central priorities of the 7th Parliament and 7th Administration, and will help us to fight against the gender-based violence and femicide, which remains the ugly face of patriarchy and intertwined with the struggle for women emancipation. In this context, House Chairperson, allow me to draw the wisdom of the former president of Mozambique, Samora Machel, in 1973, when he makes the point on the women emancipation, open quote. Women emancipation is not an act of charity, a result of humanitarian or compassionate attitude. The liberation of women is fundamental necessity for the revolution, the guarantee of its continuity, and the preconditions for its victory, close quote. In this regard, the ANC welcomed the fundamental progress underscored under the stewardship of the Honorable Minister Nokzola Tolashe, related to the establishment of the Inter-Ministerial Committee to end gender-based violence and femicide, which have become endemic and global pandemic. The ANC call all South African and all political parties across the spectrum that we must play urgent and practical role to end the GBVF. We welcome the progress to strengthen the provision of care and support for the survivors of the gender-based violence and femicide through the provisions of shelters and psychosocial support that you provide as the ministry. Because it's only through this intervention that the victims can have a meaningful path and transition to regain their hope and dignity through the treatment from the post-traumatic impact of this traumatic experience. We welcome the Minister's relentless efforts to work with the United Nations as a multilateral organization to end GBVF, and subsequent hosting of the United Nations Special Envoy to advance the plight of the victim of the monstrous crime of GBV. The ANC...
Honorable Munyai, your time has expired.
Minister, we support this budget, but on the issues of the condition, we're engaging as we heard the Minister.
Thank you, honorable members. We invite the Minister Tolashe, to respond to the debate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson and members of this House, whilst we will recognize the criticism that is put before us by the honorable members, if honorable members can come closer to our APP as well as into our speech, wherein we spoke at length on the issues that are being raised here. Chair, on the matters that are bedeviling SASSA, which has been a matter of concern by the committee, we are hard at work once again to make sure that we employ all the systems that are put in place for us to deal with these atrocities. However, I want to once again emphasize the fact that SASSA does not stop anybody's grant without a due process. And this is why we emphasize that anyone else who's been called upon to appear in the SASSA office should be assisted to make sure that he or she does that. This chair, as you might be aware, is informed by the reports after reports that were directing that SASSA, for the longest time, is paying the wrong recipients to an extent of paying civil servants that are in the payroll on other systems. And in making sure that we deal with this matter, we're trying to avoid that kind of a situation. Chair, we're all aware of the fact that on the issues of the gambling, the new interministerial committee, we hope it is going to deal with the matter. We are saying so because these issues are dealt with by the Department of Trade and Industry, which is in itself, of course, overwhelmed. And this is why we are interacting closely with them, and they are fortunately part and parcel of the IMC, so that together we can resolve this matter. Chair, on the issue of NDA's spending patterns, we are hard at work in trying to implement cost-cutting measures. To an extent, we are introducing a system wherein in provinces, NDA does not have a reason not to share offices with SASSA or DSD where it's possible. We are hard at work talking with the Minister of Department of Public Works as the custodian of the government buildings, especially in the area of Western Cape and Cape Town in particular, for them to unlock some of the buildings that are available so that we can, as SASSA, try to assess them. Whilst other processes that seek to build new offices are in the process. Chair, on the issues that talks to NPOs, honorable members, the department implemented the sector NPO funding policy that guide the funding of NPO by all provinces. We are continuing to play oversight in this regard because remember, Chair, this is a matter between provinces and the individual NPOs. However, since this complaint has been raised, we are interacting with Gauteng in particular, both politically and the head of department, to make sure that we ease the pressure towards the NPOs, who we all agree, Chair, they are assisting in making sure that service delivery is realized. On the matters that talks to CDA, Chair, this is a very serious matter. Remember, the last week, the Honorable House debated this matter, and it raised serious concern. We want to commit to say we are hard at work in trying to review the Prevention and Treatment Act with the intention of repositioning it. CDA and we are strengthening and collaborating so that we can address the issue of alcohol and drug abuse. Indeed, Chair, for this reason, we agree that the money that is assigned to them by the Treasurer is limited. Hence, we are repositioning it. Chair, as I said, we do acknowledge the need to improve communication to the people, but we are still saying already we have actively communicated with our people, and we have sent a bulk of SMSs where we are already sending to our people, and this amount of number goes to 140,000. These SMS are the ones that direct or advise people to present themselves in the SASSA offices. We appeal to this August House to please assist us in this regard. As we are doing what is expected to do, we are adhering to AGSA's recommendation, but we are making sure that we pay the right person at the right time. Yes, Chair, we also agree the fact that the closure of the pay point was still a sore point. However, on the other side of the reason, remember what our people were exposed in when those baggies of ours as SASSA were distributing money. the kind of violence that we experience when our people, especially the most vulnerable, were shot at daylight with huge ammunitions and elder people died. This is the fact that our country is going through serious violence which needs to be addressed. To an extent, we have to take decisions that are not so good for our people who are supposed to be in the recipient's side, but we had to take those decisions for us to avoid what is the problem. On the matter of management of
Honourable
long
Minister,
queues,
unfortunately, your time has expired.
thank you very much.
Order, honourable members. Honourable members, you are reminded that there are two debates that are continuing at the hour of 16:30, which are electricity and energy in Good Hope Chamber and basic education in the same committee room that we are in, M46. Honourable members, that concludes the debate for the mini plenary, and this mini plenary may rise.